Aside from final girls and sometimes the villains, there aren't many characters who make it out alive in horror movies. However, as much as these deceased characters would have ideally preferred to go on living their fictional lives in their respective films, they may be comforted slightly in the knowledge that there are other characters out there who suffered a far graver fate than they did. So with that in mind, I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are horror characters who wished they were dead. Number 9. Noah Fresh. When viewers meet Noah at the start of Fresh, she's having the worst luck with dating. She can't stand the frustrations that come with meeting new people, and after a horrendous dinner date ruins her evening, she's just about ready to give up on the whole dating thing completely. This is when she meets Steve. He's awkward but charming, and the pair hit things off straight away. And not long after, they meet for drinks and a romance starts to blossom. The pair's chemistry is so sweet, in fact, that the opening act feels more like a rom-com than a horror movie. However, things take a sinister turn around the 20-minute mark when Steve suggests they go on a weekend trip together. When Steve takes Noah back to his place, he drugs her and imprisons her in a quote-unquote luxurious cell. Though she initially starts freaking out, believing that Steve is going to murder her, the truth is actually much worse. That's because it's then revealed that Steve is actually a plastic surgeon and a cannibal who abducts young women to use them as cattle to sell their flesh to high-paying clients. Trapped with his other victims, for a little while Noah is in a situation where she'd rather a quick death than be chopped up little by little. Fortunately, and spoilers, she does eventually manage to escape, but not all of Steve's other captives are as lucky, suffering instead this slow demise. Number 8. Theresa and Jack Gardner, Color Out of Space. In phantasmagoric Lovecraft adaptation Color Out of Space, Nathan Gardner relocates his entire family to a remote farm where he hopes to live a quieter life after his wife Theresa falls ill. However, this being a horror film, Nathan's dreams of becoming an alpaca farmer are short-lived when a glowing meteorite crashes in front of their home and begins to alter reality around it. Initially, the effects of this cosmic horror start off small. The youngest child, Jack, notices strange plants and insects around the home, and so far so weird, but nothing, truly traumatizing. Then, though, when Theresa and Jack are caught in the otherworldly purple light which appears to be the cause of all of these transformations, they undergo a horrific metamorphosis. The light fuses the pair together as if the child were being put back into his mother's womb. As sickeningly grotesque as this concept is, it's the constant moans of anguish and agony emanating from the mother-son hybrid that underscores the true horror of their situation. With no way for the family to reach aid, Theresa and Jack are left to succumb to their grisly transformation until they're finally put out of their misery via a shotgun blast. And to be fair, in this case, it is probably better than spending eternity as this abomination. Number 7. Anna Martyrs. French extremity shocker Martyrs starts as it means to go on as a troubled woman named Lucy guns down a family in cold blood in the middle of a quiet breakfast. However, it turns out that they were actually responsible for the systematic abuse that Lucy received as a child. Despite getting her revenge though, she then realizes that revenge couldn't rid her of her torment, and Lucy takes her own life as her horrified friend Anna looks on. Somehow, events only get worse from there, as Anna is captured by the very same people from the same organization that tortured Lucy all those years ago. Their goal is to discover the secrets of the afterlife by torturing women until they reach a transcendental state. And Anna is the unfortunate winner of the prize of being their next subject. Consequently, Anna spends the next days or weeks being broken physically and mentally. She's brutally beaten and tortured in a process which ends with her being flayed alive. It's an absolutely ridiculous amount of punishment, and yeah, by the end she definitely wishes that they had just killed her. Number 6. David the Mist. Based on the novella of the same name by horror legend Stephen King, The Mist sees the unassuming small town of Bridgeton, Maine become enveloped in a mysterious mist that has brought with it a horde of monsters. As the mist rolls in, David and his son take shelter in the local supermarket. Of course, the townsfolk do what people do in a crisis and immediately turn on each other rather than band together to solve a common problem. Escalated by a religious fervor that grips the group, tensions continue to rise while the creatures start to pick them off. However, it's only when David and his his small band of followers are allowed to leave the supermarket when he understands the real tragedy of the situation. With a sense of utter hopelessness after realizing that his wife and daughter are dead, David does what he believes to be the kindest thing in this situation and mercy kills his son alongside his remaining friends. But as he waits for the creatures to then end his own life, the mist clears to reveal that the military has started to fight back. So yeah, in a soul-crushing bout of dramatic irony, David is now forced to live with his actions. Number 5, the costume designer, All Hallows Eve. When it comes to horror movie villains, none are as terrifyingly sadistic as killer clowns. And out of this unjolly bunch of murderers, they don't come any more horrific than Art the Clown from the Terrifier series. Before this psychotic clown got his feature spotlight though, he was actually featured in the spooky anthology flick All Hallows Eve. In the third and final segment, the short film called Terrifier, viewers follow an unnamed woman as she arrives at a petrol station on Halloween to witness the attendant kicking out Art for some deplorable actions. But when the woman then witnesses Art's brutal killing of the attendant, she becomes relentlessly pursued by the unstoppable killer, confirming my theory that nothing good has ever happened at a petrol station. Like, if you have ever had a good experience, like a really good experience at a petrol station, please tell me in the comments because, those places are write-offs. Anyway, rant aside, when Art eventually does catch his prey, the woman's fate is far worse than death. She awakes on an operating table with her arms and legs amputated and body mutilated, and sadly, this isn't a Monty Python sketch and there's no telling what Art has planned for her next. Number 4, Karen, Cabin Fever. The 2016 remake of Cabin Fever is almost identical to Eli Roth's grungy original, but it failed to garner any interest from either audiences or critics. Both versions see a group of 5 friends' weekend trip to a backwoods cabin descend into a stomach-churning nightmare when they become exposed to a flesh-eating virus. Both films also follow the same plot almost beat for beat, and each is unapologetic when it comes to its extreme gore and gratuity. However, one of the few changes this time around concerns the fate of Karen. Whereas in the 2002 version, Karen has her suffering mercifully but nevertheless violently put to an end by being bludgeoned to death by a shovel, the character's fate here is far worse the second time round. After becoming infected by the virus, Karen is left to rot throughout the course of the film. As the virus continues to take hold, her body deteriorates into a gloopy, fleshy mess. With the torment of being eaten alive understandably a little bit too much, she resorts to begging to be put out of her misery, which does happen by way of a shovel to the face. It might sound similar, but this time around it is so much more brutal. Number 3, Rex, the Vanishing. Throughout the course of The Vanishing, protagonist Rex is obsessed with uncovering the truth about what happened to his girlfriend when she inexplicably disappeared without a trace during their trip to France. 3 years later, Rex is as determined as ever to find out what happened to her on that fateful day, to the point that the mystery has all but consumed him. One day, however, Rex is approached by a stranger who claims to be the one who kidnapped his girlfriend. But instead of simply telling Rex what happened to her, he informs him that the only way he'll ever know what happened to her is if he experiences her fate for himself. And after some moments of deliberation, Rex decides, hey, what's the worst that can happen? And accepts the kidnapper's proposal. Unsurprisingly, in a turn of events no one could foresee, this was a pretty bad move, as the film ends with Rex waking up buried alive in a coffin to wait for his death. Number 2, Kana, Hostel. In the colourful landscape known as the horror genre, no characters have a worse time than those in torture movies. Their only purpose is to endure extreme pain and suffering for as long as possible, so if there are characters who'd pray for a speedy death, then, well, it would be these unfortunate souls. One such victim is the innocent Kana, an unlucky soul who finds herself at the mercy of a sadistic society that tortures tourists in Eli Roth's Hostel. Later on in the flick, protagonist Paxton runs into Kana while fleeing from the shadowy group, and to our horror, a torturer is mutilating her face with a blowtorch. But after severing her damaged eyeball with a pair of scissors, the pair do manage to escape. Both survivors then have freedom in their grasp when they reach a train station, but before they're able to board a train, Kana catches a glimpse of her reflection. And at this point, the tourist decides that she'd rather take her own life by jumping in front of a train than live with the trauma of what she just experienced. Number 1, Wade, House of Wax. Much like other Hollywood horror flicks from this time, the 2005 remake of House of Wax is a gloriously schlocky gorefest that catered specifically towards the cinematic zeitgeist. Though this horror starring Paris Hilton failed to make much of an impression on critics, it did have a successful run at the box office. Unlike the previous iterations, this version followed a group of teenagers who find themselves trapped in a ghost town where the main attraction is a wax museum that's literally made of wax. However, as one of the friends discovers, there's a reason that the waxworks look so lifelike. When invited into one of the locals' home, Wade is attacked and taken to the basement where he's paralyzed. Viewers then watch on as the completely helpless Wade is prepared to be transformed into a waxwork by the film's hulking villain. It's a long and painful process in which Wade is showered and encased within molten wax. However, when one of his friends eventually discovers this living waxwork and tries to save him, his flesh literally starts peeling off in the process, and viewers learn the severity of Wade's fate. With no way to free him, Wade is already sealed in his own tomb.